Yep. Should we want us to face you? That might make more sense. Huh? My name is Rich Hordinski. I have been a professional musician for about 25, 26 years, something like that. And I have lived in Walnut Hills, actually about 25 or 26 years. And I've been very interested in community. Opportunity came up to buy this building here. I had been looking for a space to do music in, and it worked out to get this place. And so we've been using it for music and for different community things for quite a while now. I grew up in northeastern Ohio before I lived here, and I went to college about an hour from my house. So I grew up on the outside of Cleveland. I went to school in a little town called Canton. And probably my sophomore year, a buddy of mine and myself decided that we wanted to go see this kind of famous virtuoso guitar player who was playing up right next to where I grew up. And we got just about to my hometown when the police pulled us over, and they said, you know, your plate's been expired for like a while. You have to realize that his family's from Montana. You know, in Montana, they would be like, dude, you need to take care of that. Don't let me catch you again, blah, blah, blah. But this is Ohio, so things were a little more uptight. And the policeman said, so is there anything we should know about? And my friend said, unbeknownst to me, well, there are a couple guns in the trunk. And the police were like, okay, are they loaded? And my friend said, you know, they probably are loaded. So at this point, you know, the policeman has his safety off of his gun and the whole thing. And he's not really freaked out or anything, but because we're, you know, pimply faced kids. And so he opens the trunk, and sure enough, there are two loaded shotguns in there. They took us both to the police station. Since I wasn't driving, my parents were able to just come get me. It was just a few miles away. He had to stay in post bail before he could go home and get tags for the car and all that kind of stuff, which is interesting to me in light of recent history, because now apparently it's possible to just be driving along and the police can pull you over and kill you for no reason. I was driving with expired plates, loaded guns in the back of the car, and the police just called my parents and let me go home. I contrast that with another story that happened here in Cincinnati in Walnut Hills where I live. I had two bicycles sort of mounted by stands on my back wall. They weren't locked up. And as happens in the city, one night someone took them both. I was a little grumpy about that, but there's part of me that I'm always telling people, like, you live in the city, someone's gonna break into your car, it's gonna happen every couple of years, it doesn't mean the world's gonna end. Filed a police report, didn't really think too much about it, and then about maybe 3 weeks later, I was driving, I look over on the sidewalk, and there's some kid driving my bike. It was kind of a weird bike, so it was kind of obvious that it was my bike. So I called the police, and they happened to have a car like within a few blocks. They grabbed the kid, and they took the bike away from him and just gave it to me. They didn't call to see if I'd made a police report. They didn't take the bike and impound it and have me come claim it with my ID. They didn't ask for my driver's license. They took the bike from the kid and they gave it to me. And they did that because he was black and I was white. And that to me is a huge contrast between my earlier story and this story. That kid would not probably have walked away from that earlier story. But I found out later that so the police took the kid, who I think was 17 maybe, and took him to the Juvenile Detention Center 2020 or whatever. And his dad came and got him, and I guess his dad had a pretty bad temper. He and his dad were fighting, and apparently his dad pushed him, and the kid fell backwards and hit his head on the mantelpiece of the fireplace. Got really hurt and went into a coma, and a couple of days later died. And I know it's not possible to see the end of every road that you start down, but boy, if I could start down that road again and see the end of that, I'd be like, dude, you can have the bike. People talk about white privilege, and I've heard someone use the analogy that it's like being a fish in the water, that you're just in it and you don't realize it. And that I think of those two events as like, if I was a fish in the water, I jumped out and saw the air for a little while, and it just helped me to recognize how that all works.